My blind date gave me an IQ test on the spot. When he found out that I had a good score, he said he won't be able to date me because I'm too smart for him and I will end up making his life miserable. Reddit. Do you have any WTF date stories? I once went on a date with this girl. We started with a movie. After the movie finished, as we were pulling out of the parking lot, she saw her father leaving the same movie with a woman who wasn't her mother. Yikes, that sounds like a horrible position to be in. After our first date, he gave me a verbal report card in the car. One of my negatives was that I took too small of bites. Apparently my good table manners made him nervous, but one of my positives was that it seemed like I liked to be in the kitchen. About 2 hours after the date, he called me to tell me that he had looked through my entire Facebook and read all of my blog. He had decided that I was cooler than he'd thought on our date, so he called the girl he had plans with the next night and dumped her to hang out with me more. Needless to say, there was no second date. Female. Upon further inspection, I have decided that your specifications meet my expectations. Report tomorrow for dinner and I shall continue your evaluation. I went on a first date with this guy who seemed really sweet. We went out to a really classy dinner. The food was great. The atmosphere was fantastic. But at the end of the main course, he whipped out his phone and started showing me pictures he'd taken of his dong. Like, different angles, lighting, dynamic effects. I rode with him to the restaurant, so I had to sit next to him on the ride home and fight the urge to fling the door open and tuck and roll. I have horrible self-esteem and date losers. Divorced over 10 years. Went on a date with some internet dude and he wanted me to stay over. Fine, but no way was I putting out with this one on the first date. Okay, fine. He says, why don't you come with me to the bathroom and make out while I jerk off? This has become a go-to line with my friends. Dated a girl for a couple weeks. Went back to her place. Started opening up to each other for the first time. Conversation was something like this. She got into talking about her family. Her talking about her bipolar mother. Her talking about her probably being bipolar because of it. Her talking about how she has no luck with men because she gets overly emotional. Her crying about it while I try to console her. Her accusing me of being just like every other guy that is going to leave her. Her yelling at me with tears streaming down her face to get the frick out of her house because I'm an butthole. This whole transformation took about 15-20 minutes. She also messaged me a week later asking where we should go on another date. I'm usually a sucker for helping people in need, but that is one case I am just not qualified to deal with. I had a gal ask me what I looked for in a partner. She seemed annoyed that my answer was rather general, and proceeded to pull out her list. It was 8 typed pages. She started going through them and giving me check marks. I didn't get very many. I had recently started dating this guy and we were on our way to Circuit City to browse around for a few things he needed for his computer. While in the car on the way there, an annoying techno song came on and I commented on how I couldn't stand how often they played it on the radio. He turned it up a bit, telling me that he liked the song. I laughed and jokingly said, okay, well, I'm not talking to you until this song finishes. I smiled at him and looked away, just enjoying the car ride. We park the car and I immediately sense that something is wrong. He's walking a few paces in front of me, clearly trying to avoid walking side by side. I let it go and run to catch up to him. I take his arm and kiss him on the cheek and proceed to walk to the store with him. Again, he seems distant. I ask him what's wrong and he tells me he's fine. I let it go and decide to enjoy the shopping we were there to do. We're browsing through the store and suddenly I realize that he's nowhere to be seen. It's around 7 PM at the time and the store was pretty crowded. I figure he must have wandered to another aisle and I do the same. 15 minutes later, there is still no sight of him at all. I'm walking through the store searching for him, and nothing. It's now 8 PM. I call his cell phone and it rings out. I walk out to the car, and it's empty. There are about 6 other stores in the complex and I wasn't about to walk to each one searching for him. It's now 8:45 and I'm getting scared. The store closes at 9, so there aren't that many people there. Finally, the store is closing and I walk out to the nearly empty parking lot. There he is, sitting in the car. I run over with tears in my eyes asking what happened. He looks at me calmly and says, "Now you know how it feels when the lines of communication have been cut." It was my freshman year of college and I had started dating this 23-year-old. He took me to Wendy's for a date because neither of us had a lot of money. He had one of those monotone voices and could drone on and on and on about nothing. He was telling one such story when I swallowed my water the wrong way and started coughing. This was still a date, so at first I tried to politely expel the water, but to no avail. As he continued to talk, I started hacking all over the table. Tears were streaming down my face, water was dribbling down my chin, and I was pounding my own back at a futile attempt to get the devil water out of my system. He kept talking. Trying to hold the water in at first was a bad idea. I could not stop coughing. I bent down under the table, hoping the angle would make it easier to cough up the liquid. Everybody in the whole restaurant was staring at me in silence, except for my date, of course. He was still telling his story. I finally finished hacking up my lungs and tried to listen to the rest of his story. I had no idea what he was talking about. He continued with his anecdote unfazed by my wet, red face and smeared makeup. When he finally finished, I apologized for my coughing fit and explained that I had swallowed my water the wrong way, to which he replied, "Oh, I was wondering what was wrong with you. Sounds autistic to me." The only blind internet date I ever went on, in 1993 no less. He took me out for dinner and a movie. We saw Schindler's List at the Dollar Theater. No lie, his choice. Afterwards, he told me he didn't believe the Holocaust happened. Dinner was at Burger King. My meal of chicken tenders and a small fry cost under $4 at the time. Afterwards, I bid him good evening and he complained that I didn't put out because he bought me dinner. Heck, even if I did it for a living I'd charge more than $4. I didn't stick around to go watch Apollo 13 and find out if he thought the moon landing was faked, and perhaps eventually barter my favors for an entire extra value meal. My self-esteem in college was low, but not that low. 9/10 dates I've been hooked up with via dating sites have all started out with a woman saying a variation of the following: "I'm not looking for a boyfriend, I'm just looking for a friend." Now I know I'm not the best looking dude out there, but come on, you've already seen my pic, recent too, and we met through a dating website for the purpose of dating, not hanging out. I went on a date with a guy who said he was getting into the elements and slowly has developed the ability to control fire. I can control fire. Most I use matches to start them and water to put them out. I'm white. I went out with an Indian girl twice who constantly talked about how India was so much nicer than the United States, how Indian culture is far superior to Western culture, and how Indian guys much more refined and attractive than white men. And then she dumped me for being white. What? Sounds like she dated you briefly to pee off her parents. I was on second date. This guy said he wanted to cook something elaborate for me. I met him at his house. He shows me his freezer and asks me to pick a frozen dish which he then puts in the microwave for me. Seriously, WTF material. Thank God that's all he had in his freezer. Once I went on a first date and the guy told me that I seem great. He just had one concern. I'm not saying you're fat, but I'm worried you will gain weight and not be attractive to me anymore. I was 110 pounds at the time, and I was eating a salad. Then in the car, he asked me for a beach. "B please." I wonder about men who disrespect women, then want to place their penises between the aggrieved party's teeth. I went out with a really gorgeous girl who I didn't know was bipolar and off her meds. She wanted to drive, so we took her car. We went to dinner, which was fine, and then a movie, where she got more and more agitated and then excused herself. I thought she was going to a bathroom, then said out loud, "No, she's bugging out," and walked out and found her in the parking lot searching for her car. She screamed at me that I'd been making fun of her, the people in the theater had been making fun of her, and the people in the movie had been making fun of her. I got her calmed down and got her home, and on the way found out that she was bipolar. She had stopped taking her meds. She was into self-harm. She beat her face black and blue right there in the car, and the car was stolen. She kept calling after that asking when we were going to go out again. Nope, nope, nope. The car being stolen is the cherry that makes this story truly fantastic. First date, drove around the countryside, explored abandoned building, went to the beach, Had a great time overall. Second date. Arrive at college jazz show. She is sitting with another dude, holding hands. I sit in the back of the room bewildered, whilst she turns around every few minutes grinning at me. Third date. Drive around town. Goof off in random stores. Spontaneous Makira session at stoplight. Cause minor traffic jam. Have mind-blowing car sex next to a creepy power station industrial thing on a foggy highway. Fourth date. Arrive to pick her up for date. She is chatting up another guy. Car drives up. She gets in and leaves, leaving me with some random dude who ends up crying. He turns out to be suicidal. Cries on my shoulder for several hours. We get burgers and talk about life, smoke a bunch of cigarettes, and have a strangely decent evening in the process. End up saving bullying woman from dude who is blocking her car trying to force his way into her car. Fifth date. Frick that. Stayed home and had a wank. It's like a quirky romantic comedy, but with a realistic ending. As a guy, I've occasionally heard other guys say they aren't interested in smart women. As far as I can tell, it's because they are full of crap, and they know, at least subconsciously, that a woman with half an ounce of sense isn't going to put up with it. I think it's usually just the same as smart people aren't usually interested in any old daft bastard. Generally they want to be with someone about as smart as themselves. I was set up on my first blind date by a friend who swore up and down that this guy was perfect for me. I asked her if he knew that I am basically a very geeky goth and she said he had a thing for goth girls. Get to the restaurant and have a decent appetizer, talking about generic things like school, movies and books, and the server came by and took our orders, and when she left, he clapped his hands together and said, well, I guess we should get this out of the way. If we're going to date, there's a few things you need to do. I will point out now that he was not joking. He genuinely wanted me to do the following. Lose weight. I am 1.76 meters tall and 65 kilograms, 5 feet 8 and 145 pounds, 10 stone. I needed to lose 15-20 pounds. Dye my hair brown. My hair was pink and black. Get to tan. I'm white as a fish belly. Dress in the clothing he picked out. He told me he had excellent taste. Remove all my piercings. I had 17. No more tattoos. I had 2. My nail polish had to be normal. No black, green or blue. I would not be allowed to play video games, watch horror movies or read comics, because girls don't do that. Different jewelry. No more bats. I remember hearing all of what he was saying and just thinking this is a joke. A TV host will jump out and tell me I'm on a joke show. That never happened. People near us overheard this and began craning their necks, trying to look at me and see what was so awful. He ticked off all the things I needed to change and then sat back, smiled and asked when I would be able to get started. The server came back with our meals and I have a lovely plate of pasta in front of me. I don't know what got in my head, but I picked up my plate and dumped it into his lap. I left the restaurant, walked down the block and went into a convenience store and called a different friend to pick me up and told them the whole story. Cried a little and basically felt absolutely hideous. The person who set me up on the date was horrified. Said she had no idea he'd do something so awful. That was my first and last blind date. It's been a while since that awful day and I can proudly state that I am still as geeky, pale and obsessed with bats as I was then. And no one keeps me away from my SNES. People near us overheard this and began craning their necks, trying to look at me and see what was so awful. They were craning their necks to see if you would stab him in the neck with a fork. Plan for date is dinner and a movie. We were set up by a mutual friend and had been texting and talking on the phone and I was pretty excited. He shows up an hour late. I would have cut and run then, but I wanted to make the best of it. And he was good friends with one of my friends, so on the way to the movie I discover he already had dinner. I'm now starving hungry, so I make the best of it and grab chocolate bars at the gas station. He starts talking about how chocolate will make me fat. I'm a skinny girl. And still, who says that? So we're waiting for the movie to start and I'm munching on my snacks and he keeps going on about how I wouldn't want to get fat, being fat is so terrible. I smile and nod. On the drive home we start talking about movie editing. I ask him a question and I'm halfway through it when he cuts me off and says you're smart too. Now I'm really in love. Then he doesn't actually answer my question, just starts aimlessly complimenting me. When he dropped me off, I'm ready to dash but still, Too nice to be rude, and it's kind of a laugh. The guy is arrogant, shallow, rude, and can't hold an intelligent conversation. Now he's telling me about his gun collection. Oh look, there's some in his trunk. He wants to show me them, but I have an early class so I have to go. We never spoke again. Can't tell if all the fat talk was him trying out his mad lead poo and negging skills, or him just being a total dong. I told a guy about my mom's upcoming surgery, not life-threatening. The guy said to me, well, because of where you grew up, maybe a death in the family would serve you well. You know, a character builder. People like you could really learn from that. So he wanted my mom to die? Great. Then he goes on to tell me a sob story about drunk driving and being in a coma and how he turned his life around. Bartender asks for his ID. I notice it isn't a license. I ask about it, and he says he got a DUI a few weeks ago. I could keep going. This date was epic. I ended up being saved by a stranger in the end who was witnessing my misery. Please, do go on. My date tried to crash her car into a tree. Neither of us were injured badly, but the car was wrecked. Later she confessed that she wanted me to become paralyzed so I'd never leave her and she can look after me forever. Help. She was trying to misery you. Holy frick. I thought we had the monopole for crazy dates in Italy, but reading the comments here I guess not. Okay, some of my stories now. I went on a date with a girl and during the date she showed me pictures of her boobs and her mom's boobs. She asked me which were nicer. I'm still not sure what she's doing with pics of her mom's tea in her purse or why she cares what a first date thinks of them. I did not go on a second date to find out. On another date with another girl, we went for a walk across the city. Guys she knew kept stopping her on the street to say hi and exchange a few words with her. Each time she'd tell me it was one of her brothers. Apparently this girl had over 15 brothers and randomly met them all on the same day. I still have no idea who these guys really were or why she clearly lied about their relationship. Another girl I went on a date with brought a female friend along. The female friend would always sit or stand a few feet from us and not get involved in what we were doing. She was just observing us intently. When I met the girl at first that day she said her friend liked to come along on dates, but that didn't make much sense to me. Near the end of the afternoon I ended up asking her what's up with her friend observing us from a distance with a weird look. My date replied, I told you she likes to come along on dates and watch us. I pushed for some more details, and my date finally let out, well, she really likes watching people on dates. It turns her on. You know, that's when I realized the weird look her friend had all day while watching us was actually a look or sexual arousal. I have never been so creeped out in my life. When I reach for the door, he tackles and shoves me aside so he can open the door for me. I thought it was an accident, so I laugh it off, commenting on how hard it must be for guys to follow all these rules of being gentlemanly, opening doors etc. and mentioned it's easier for me as there are fewer rules to follow. He gets a devilish look in his eyes and says women are expected to provide certain services to a gentleman. Oh frick no. Ugh. I cringed when I read this. What a creeper. I met a girl for some drinks. Not only was she the most lazy and bitchy woman I've ever met, but after she saw me pick up our drinks from the bar and bring them to her, she openly tells me that she won't be drinking it because I could have drugged it, and she didn't want me to rape her. I drank both drinks and stumbled the frick out without another word. Plot twist, she then raped you. For some reason the dates that I have been on, all OkCupid dates, I have turned into these guys' psychologist. The thing is that I actually try to help them. One guy told me all about his dong that was curved down and he was really insecure about it and that he suffered from terrible nightmares. I assured him that that's normal for a lot of guys and listened to his dreams. Another guy described to me in great detail at a California pizza kitchen how his mother was sexually, physically, and emotionally abusive. That one I really tried to be nice, but I was out of there in less than an hour. Another guy met for coffee and described his manic depressive disorder furthered by his recent breakup with his soulmate. I tried to give him a silver lining speech but he was having none of it. Another guy started our date yelling at his roommate over the phone because her cat shat all over his mattress. He was pee. He didn't really take it out on me, but he talked about how pee he was all night. Again, I listened and tried to be supportive. I think I may be too nice, or deserve a job in social work. You are a son. Had a girl bring her boyfriend to a date once. Apparently the two girls that set us up, mutual friends, didn't like her current boyfriend, so she agreed to go out with me. But she didn't have a problem with her boyfriend, so she brought him along. I dated a guy I thought was great until I came home to meet his mom one day. We walk in and she is all smiles and polite to me as she is tidying the house. He was getting ready for our dinner date and walked into the laundry room to get his clothes. Out he comes screaming at his poor mother and waving a pair of jeans in her face. When I say screaming, I mean his face was red and spittle was flying, all because she dried a pair of his jeans and they shrunk. She was reduced to tears and he actually got to the point where he just sat down on the couch and tugged on his shirt collar until it was shredded in his hands. I walked up to her and apologized that she had to deal with that and walked out the door. He ran after me crying and holding bits of shirt, asking, well, more like demanding, that I stay and begging me not to leave. I turned and told him that you just don't talk to someone like that, especially your mother, especially someone who was trying to do something nice for you, and there was no way in heck I was going to see someone who had such anger problems and lack of self-control. I mean, he was 20, that's no excuse. Kudos for the nice gesture for his mom. Worst date I've had. Well, I take it back, the date itself was awesome. We hit it off and had a lot of common interests. It was the end of the date that sucked. She asked me at the end of the date what my Facebook name was. I told her, honestly, that I don't have Facebook and don't have one. I still don't. She looked shocked. Anyways, since the first date went great, I asked her out again a few days later and she flat out told me no. Because, and I quote, I can't trust anyone who doesn't have a Facebook account. So glad I avoided crazy that early on. I had a guy flirt with me for about 3 weeks, and I don't mean little things. I mean he insisted on buying me drinks, played with my hair, complimented me constantly, and by the end of week 3 was very forward flirting wise. Only for him to tell me he has a girlfriend. He decided to do this while we were watching a movie at his apartment, and then he tried to kiss me. When I called him out, he claimed he was just socially awkward and didn't realize I was taking everything romantically. Needless to say, I dropped any and all contact, except for when I saw him in the class we shared. He showed up to the next 3 classes drunk off his butt, and picked a fight with the guy behind him. Bullet dodged. I was on a dating site for a while, agreed to meet a guy for drinks after we emailed back and forth for a while. I should have seen the red flags. Is a lawyer, well educated, seemingly honest, claims to be a good looking guy, posts a deceptive photo of himself. I barely recognized him when I saw him. He refused to tell me where he worked or his last name, explained his phone number is unlisted due to his profession. Then he proceeds to go through all of the photos on my phone when I tried to show him just one. I got the most expensive drink I could find, chugged it, then got out as fast as I could. Once went out with this guy on a whim, totally great first date, apparently went even better for him. He told me he loved me 2 days later. If anyone's interested, that was years ago and we're still dating. I give him crap about it to no end. Sell not virtue to purchase wealth, nor liberty to purchase power. BF. A blind date also. My guy first thought his Acura NSX, the older version, was a chick magnet. So much so, that he clearly felt no reason to act like a decent human being. We were sitting at a sports bar, talking and getting to know each other. About 5 minutes in, he starts arguing with me over nothing and starts insulting me. We weren't even taking about anything argumentative. He had asked me where I like to hang out in our city, then proceeded to tell me how stupid everything I was saying was. Anyway, he was the biggest dong I've ever met or even had a date with. I left when he went to the bathroom. I thought he might force me to go eat with him. I just couldn't handle that. When I was 15, I went abroad to Germany to study for a year. I was an awkward, anxious, nerdy kid and didn't make any friends, though one charitable soul offered to set me up on a date with a guy she knew from another school. I've never been the dating type, but I went along with it in hopes that it might crack some of the boredom. And what the heck, maybe this guy and I might hit it off. Fast forward to date day, and I ask the guy what he wants to do. It's a small suburban town just far enough outside the nearest city for it to be a pain in the butt to commute to, and not big enough on its own to offer much in the way of entertainment for 2 teens on a blind date. This guy, let's call him Cool because that's actually his name, suggests going for a walk. Fine, I'm down with that. So we walk around, grab a coffee, and shoot the crap for about an hour or so. That's all the time I need to settle any doubt that this guy is not for me. He's not a bad guy, he just lacks even the faintest glimmer of intelligence. I ask him about his hobbies, and he tells me that he's interested in pipe fitting because that's the vocation he intends to go into at his father's request, despite his own indifference. I ask him if he likes to travel and he says no, but he's traveled a bit in his life. Where did he travel? About 45 kilometers west of the town he grew up in, when he got lost and accidentally crossed the border into the Netherlands on his moped. He then launches into a tangent, completely out of nowhere, about how women can't and shouldn't be allowed to operate motor vehicles. Hypocrisy much? At school the following week, the girl who set me up with this guy asked how everything went. I tried to be as diplomatic as possible and said that he seemed like a nice guy, but we didn't have much in common and thanks for making the effort, but I'm not interested in a second date. My host sister, who'd bullied me in subtle ways from pretty much within a week of my arrival, then joined my classmates and they both collapsed in paroxysms of laughter and high fives. Apparently the two of them had arranged this date as a prank, and had a bet with each other, if I had agreed to a second date, then BA, can't remember if it was the host sister or my classmate, would have won. If not, then BB. And if I had slept with the dude, well, I don't know. It never would have come to that. Needless to say that, upon learning of this scheme at my expense, I unleashed some serious bitch slapping. And at that commotion of hair pulling yelps and nails rending flesh, the balance was restored to the galaxy. I was on a first date with a guy I liked, and while he was driving, red Mazda Miata, he got a speeding ticket and asked me to pay for it. Since I was talking and he was distracted from the road, I was annoyed, but I took the ticket. He then took me to dinner at Hooters and asked me to pick up the tab so he can pay for us to get into some nightclub, where he spends the entire evening talking about other women he'd been with. Needless to say there was no second date. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.